With reports of improvement in Iraq, the reason America went to war is back in the news, courtesy of two behind-the-scenes books by former top Bush advisors.
It was the right decision to confront what was a grave and growing threat in the form of Saddam Hussein.
Scott McClellan, the president's press secretary for 3 years who long defended the war in Iraq, now calls it a strategic blunder.
The president is someone who just got caught up in the way the game is played in Washington.
In his tell-all memoir, What Happened, McClellan joins critics who say that Bush was bent on war. Stopping short of calling the president a liar, McClellan says Bush signed off on a less than honest strategy to manipulate public opinion and politicize pre-war intelligence in a reckless rush to war.
Instead of looking at the hard truths and explaining those to the American people about what to expect with war, we got caught up in this whole mentality of selling the war to the American people. And yes, in itself, it becomes a game played on spin, a game played on obfuscation.
A former Pentagon advisor tells a different tale.
A lot of what the public thinks it knows, based on all of the books and major articles that have come out about the Iraq War, is really wrong.
Doug FEITH, former Undersecretary to Defense Chief Donald Rumsfeld, disputes conventional wisdom that going to war was mainly about establishing democracy or finding weapons of mass destruction.
The reason to go to war was to remove these threats, and I think it would have been much better had the president remained clear on that point, so that the critics of the war could not say, you've accomplished nothing if you fail to achieve this extremely high standard of stable democracy, which I don't think is going to be achieved for some time yet.
In his book, War and Decision, FEITH uses previously unpublished documents and notes of meetings he attended with the National Security Team for his insider account of the administration's decision to remove Saddam Hussein. Who were the people in these meetings?
Well, it was the president, Vice President Cheney, and Colin Powell and Don Rumsfeld, Condi Rice, General Myers, George Tenet, all the key players.
McClellan claims those players, with the exception of Secretary of State Colin Powell, failed to advise Bush on the costs of war, and had the president known, he would not have invaded Iraq.
I do believe that the president made the right decision.
But the Pentagon's former number 3 man insists Bush did weigh the risks. He says it was Rumsfeld, not Powell, who warned Bush of possible worst-case scenarios of war in an October 2002 memo called The Parade of Horribles.
Warned that the war could be costlier and bloodier and more protracted than anybody had hoped, that it could, if we get bogged down there, it could hurt our efforts in other areas, that our enemies could take advantage of our preoccupation. He even warned we might not find WMD and our credibility will be destroyed.
FEITH says Bush decided the risk of inaction and leaving Saddam in power posed a greater threat.
The nature of the threat was WMD. It was the record of Saddam in supporting terrorism. It was the record of Saddam in launching aggressions like the Iran-Iraq War and the invasion of Kuwait. He was a very dangerous, aggressive, hostile guy. If we had left him in power, and then the things we were worried about had materialized, how would the government have been able to explain to the American people why it had sat back and allowed those threats to materialize?
Yeah, I had concerns, I think, like a lot of people, that were rushing into this, but that wasn't my focus area, and I gave the benefit of the doubt because I have great affection for the president. I trusted in his judgment, and in that instance, I think that my trust was misplaced.
And as for the slogan, Bush lied, people died, wrong again, says FEITH. The White House acted in good faith, he says, while relying on bad intelligence about WMD. And officials should have done more to convince Americans that the war in Iraq was worthwhile.
We did not find the WMD stockpiles that the CIA said we would. We did find that Saddam had chemical and biological weapons programs, that he had facilities, that he had the intention to have WMD, that he maintained the personnel, he maintained materiel, and he maintained the capability to produce chemical and biological weapons stockpiles in 3 to 5 weeks.
Another war theme, the post-war protracted occupation of Iraq, one that many say damaged U.S. credibility abroad. FEITH blames internal administration differences for that, saying the State Department blocked the Pentagon's plan for a rapid transition to power. Melissa Charbonneau, CBN News, Washington.